I got an interesting project to do a microtonal classical guitar, a 31 tone to the octave microtonal. And I've done quite a few of them. There's a guy here in town named Neil Haverstick who's pretty big in the microtonal world, written books and things like that. And I've done a number of guitars for him and other people that he's passed my name on to, and I assume that the guy I'm doing this for got my name from him or something like that, because I get people send me stuff from all over, and I really actually don't even know where this guy is, but he wants a 31 tone to the octave microtonal classical. So he's got this, he ordered this Korean classical, which is pretty nice. It's like an Agile, A-G-I-L-E, but nice cutaway electronics. Probably, I don't know, it's like a $600 guitar or something like that, retail. And he ordered it from them fretless, which they would do. And we also ordered it with the neck off, obviously not glued on yet, so I'm going to have to set the neck and do all that when I'm done, but this makes things a lot easier for doing the frets, obviously. I've done quite a few, conversions where I've taken, Fender style bolt-on necks, basses, guitars, and pulled all the frets, filled in all the slots, and kind of done this same process to them to refret them in a microtonal way, and it works pretty good. This will be a little easier with a classical because we got a flat board, no radius, and no frets to start with, so we got a clean slate to play with. So it should go pretty quick. So what I do is I go to a website called FretFind 2D. It came right up for me. I hadn't used it in a while, and I searched it and popped right up. It's a real basic website, like one page, and there's probably others out there by now, but it's one that's been around forever, and it's pretty basic. You just type in dimensions. It'll want to know like the nut width and the string width at the bridge and your scale length, of course. This one's a 25.5-inch scale, and then it'll ask you how many frets you want to the octave, and it'll map it all out for you, and it'll give you a file that you can download, like a PDF file, and print a full-size template on computer paper. You have to kind of, it comes in 2 pages, and if you got a lot of frets, it would be 3 pages, but anyway, you can see that. And then you got to kind of figure out where these overlap, like usually the last 2 frets on the first page kind of overlap with the first 2 frets on the second page. It'll ask you how many frets you want on the website, so you know how many frets it put in there, and you can count them so you know where to overlap it and where your octave is and everything. So I just cut that out with the computer paper, and it works great. I've used it, you could use it for hand sawing them or whatever, and I've even used it when I've done some strange instruments that I've had to build with some weird scales and stuff like that. You can just go there and it will print it right out for you. Well, you got to print it out, but so what I do is I'll take that and I kind of cut it out with the scissors and give myself a full-length template. You can see where I've taped it here, where I've had to line up the frets, the ones that overlap, and just make myself a nice little template that's going to go onto my fretboard. Now I guess if you were hand sawing them, I just spray it. I use a little general purpose 3M arts and crafts spray. You use that for all kinds of things, sandpaper and whatever. But I'm going to use a little bit of that, and I'm going to glue it onto my fretboard. Now I'm going to be cutting my slots on a fret sled on the small table saw, like you usually do with templates and stuff, but I don't have a Lexan template for this, so we got to kind of freehand it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it down face side down, so that when I flip it over and put it on my saw, I'll get it so I just have a little bit of those, I can't really see it, but just overhang it enough on the edge that I can see the lines for where all my fret slots are going to be. And this is going to go, we're going to go to 44 frets on this thing, which is almost at the end of the board, and the frets get so close together that Yeah, they get a little, it's a little decorative up there past the octave and everything, but he's like, well, while we're doing it, he kind of figured out which, harmonics he wants, and he's like, yeah, I'd like to have up to 44. He's like, I don't know if I'll ever hit that note again, but since we're doing it, we might as well do as many as we. It'll only fit like 48 on the board, but that's a lot of frets. So yeah, it ends up being a major fret job, but getting these slots all cutted where we want them is a big part of the battle. So, go to that website, it prints it right out. Just make sure your printer's set to like 100%, and then count all your frets that you put in there, and make sure that you're overlapping it at the right spot. And then even take your scale length, and this is 25 and a half, so it should be 12 3/4 to the octave, which it is, right on the money. So we assume that this printed out correctly and everything's cool, and I think it is. Check and double check. The other thing about this deal is, usually when you're cutting fret slots on a sled like we're going to do, you start with a square board and then you cut the tapers after you're done, so you've got square frets to the center line. This, since we have a pre-made neck that's tapered already, I got to add, I need to make sure that I'm square to the center line. So I pencil, give myself a center line down the middle, and then I actually just kind of went through my scrap bin, but I've got a cutoff from a fingerboard, I think it's on this fingerboard even, and it looked to be about the right taper, because we got to put that on here to make sure that when we put it on the sled and we put it on the table saw, that it is square to the blade, because we don't want frets going at an angle. If we were to just put it in there like that, it would be a little bit cockeyed a bit. So, and it just so happened that this one I had to do a little sanding on it, but it was pretty much spot on, which is pretty amazing. So I just kind of tape it to the edge of it here, just so it's not going to slide on me. And then I got this on the side, and obviously just to double check it, I just measure from my center line to the edge of it, and all the way up and down it, and if it stays the same, which it did pretty amazingly, I was surprised at how well it works, we're going to end up with nice square frets. So there's another way we can kind of test it on the saw, just to make sure that we're square, but I think we're good to go. So alright, so here at my table saw, so I've glued this on my template. It's upside down, and I left one edge here just barely showing on that side, so I can see the lines for the frets sticking out. And I got my square wedge here. Everything's all washed out, isn't it? Kind of taped to my neck to keep it square. So I got my fret slotting sled and my fret slotting saw all loaded up. And yeah, basically there's, I can kind of double check my squareness by kind of running the blade right over where the nut ledge is. And another thing I can do is I can kind of just line up one of these lines. I'm going to cut it, but without the saw blade going, I can just sort of run it over top and just kind of give a little pressure down, and that'll put some little puncture marks in my paper, and I can see that it's looking pretty good and square. Puncture marks are running right over the line that I can see that's printed on the paper from one side to another. I can try a couple different ones like that just to make sure. If I'm right on the line, it shouldn't make a difference. I just want to make sure that I'm square. I'm doing 44 frets, so I want to make sure that I'm cutting properly. Yeah, that looks really good. The little perforations from the kerf of the blade are cutting right across the line that I can see coming through the back of the paper, so I'm pretty happy with that. I don't know how much square we could get. I just got to make sure all this kind of stays in place, and just slowly sit here and do one fret at a time. 44 times. Whew. It's a massive. Let's just check this one real quick just to make sure we're starting off on the right foot. Line up the line that I can see from the paper. Kind of push down on that, just run it over the blade without it running. And I get a real nice perf mark. I wish you could see that, but on that line. Anyway, you get the idea, right? So let's get going. So we crank up the long fret. That's good. I'll kind of check my depth. And the thing about this guitar is it has binding, but we're just going to have to cut through the binding. It's black binding. I like the depth on that. I like them a little deeper than the tang on the fret. These are getting some pretty small frets, so I just have to carefully line up my lines and saw and cut on the line. A lot of frets, so sometimes I'll kind of take a break, let the blade cool down. I just want to make sure that everything's getting cut as it should be. Don't want to rush. Make sure that I'm lining things up with that blade right on the line. Don't force it through the blade. The blade can kind of bend a little bit. I got these fret saw blades are pretty narrow. So we'll be there. You can see we're cutting through frets. All seems to be going well. Alright, we're off the saw. I can take this wedge off. Square wedge. Of course I got this still glued there, but look at all those frets. Oh boy, how much fun are we going to have fretting. It's a double fret job and then some. But everything looks good. I'm looking at all the lines. I cut square on all the lines that I can see printed from underneath, so 31 tone classical guitars coming soon. So, I mean, that doesn't take long at all. And then this just all peels off because this stuff's really light duty, but it's good enough to hold things in place while you need them, and then it's light enough that you can clean it and get rid of it all when you don't need it anymore. So, all right, now we're having fun fretting this bad boy, our Microtonal 31 tone. So, you have to kind of go through. The fret saw does a pretty good job, but it's a little small on the kerf depending on what kind of frets you're using, and just kind of happen to have some somewhat thick kerfs on these guys, so I'm kind of smashing the barbs down, and I go through and opened up some of the slots with another saw, just kind of get them prepared so that there's a lot of frets. So I mean, if you were to really like compression fret all these frets in, you know, you could end up with a backbowed neck pretty easily. So just trying to get them to, you know, fit tight, but not too tight. I'm just hammering them in. It seems to be going well. So yeah, I get all the slots kind of where I want them as far as the width and everything. And according to my tang width of the fret size I'm using, it's kind of a small fret, a little bit towards the medium size, but with them this close, I was going to use a slightly larger one, but they get pretty cramped. So since it's a flat board, I just kind of use a piece of maple, kind of even out my hammering so I don't dent them too much or anything. And go down there, you end, there it goes. And they're staying pretty level with each other, so if I do that and use a little block of wood to hammer them in. So I want them to go in somewhat tight, but with this many frets, it's dangerous to go too tight. because I don't want to end up with a backbowed neck. And I wish I had my other pliers for doing this that I can't seem to find. This vice grip is sufficing. Come on, it's a good one still. Lock all the time. So I'm just kind of smashing those barbs a little bit because pretty tight. But if I get it just enough where I can feel it go in, but it needs some coaxing. Look at it, looks good, looks down. Getting there. It's a lot of frets. Look at all those frets. Microtonal. So, a lot of fretting to do. But all my slotting came out good and everything looks like where it should be, so just keep on fretting. Alright, got all these guys in. So, it's kind of rough right now. Like I said, I'm going to put a flat caul on top of here, put it in a vise and clamp over the ends down. I got a couple ends that are a little loose and popping, but everything went in pretty tight, and then I'll just zap the ends with super glue as I clamp it. And I always do that on fret jobs. I've got a curved caul for guitars with radiuses, and you can use like a radius sanding block and stuff like that. But I like to go down and zap all the ends with some cyanacrylate. Just holds them in place, keeps them from popping, gets everything down tight, and then hopefully it's looking pretty good. But I don't need to do too much leveling, but of course you always got to do a little leveling, so the less is more on this thing. So just kind of going over the ends of the frets here, just kind of show you quick what I do. I got a little pile of super glue here that I keep, and a little crappy old screwdriver that I use to apply it. So yeah, I kind of put a caul over a piece of maple, flat piece of maple over my board, put it in my vise here, excuse me. And just so many frets at a time, I just drop a little, I've nipped them, but I haven't filed or done anything like that to the end, so they're all pretty rough and sticking out. So as many as I can get away with here on my vise, I just drop some super glue in and put it most of the octave, and then I crank it in tight. Just to push any kind of ends down that might be a little loose. They're all pretty good. I kind of went back over and with a fret rocker and things and found some high spots and gave them some hammering. And then after I do that, I sprinkle, this has got black binding on it, so I'm sprinkling a little bit of ebony dust in there, fill that gap underneath the fret tang. And then I go back and hit it again with some super glue. I might sprinkle a little more on there, depends if I get that slot filled. And this also kind of fills around the end of the fret, the edge of the board, and so it works really good because when you file everything off, all this is mostly going to come off, and this is pretty thick poly finish on this guitar, so I'm not going to go through the finish or anything like that. But when I get it filed down, leave a little file marks on the edges, and I can wet dry it and buff it out. And it looks like a mess now, but after I'm all done filing and giving it some buffing, it'll look like a factory job. So just to show you, after I get done with the ends, so I made all those, you saw me putting all that super glue and sawdust on the sides of the frets, and it makes a mess. And then you file everything in, and the one thing that helps is that super glue kind of keeps your file off the original finish. And then you just kind of hit it a little bit with a real light file, and then I take, some wet dry sandpaper up to like 4,000 grit and just buff it all out, the original finish and everything I hit, because it's pretty fat polyurethane on this guy. So that and a little, 3M Perfected machine polish, which works great for all kinds of things. You get pretty much a factory fret end when you're all done. So I got a little more buffing to do on there, but they look like They were born in that fretboard. Squeak. All right, so I think I'm ready to put this neck on this guitar. We're all fretted. So, let's see that. Lots of frets. So, all leveled out. Went pretty painlessly. There was a couple frets that up in here that weren't quite set right, and I just replaced them as I go. I usually do that if I start leveling and I get a loose fret or something that's not quite right. I just pull it and reset a new fret into it before I do all that work and battle some fret that isn't gonna behave for time to do it. So, but pretty happy with it. Leveled out pretty quick and crowned and polished. So I will know more when we get strings on it, but we got to get the neck on. So like I said, he ordered this guitar and they sent it from the factory. Well, they sent it directly to me with the neck off, which was great. And I had to pull the nut off. They had the nut on there, but no big deal. Looks like the original nut's going to work fine for how it's cut. I'm going to clear the first fret. So probably need a little dialing in, but we'll get it set up after we get it glued on. So for the most part, I mean, it's a dovetailed joint, which is sweet, and fit really well. I did a little bit of work on the back of the heel just to kind of get the seam along the body to fit a little better and kind of pitch it back so it's got a little bit more of a pitch to it now. But it's pretty much pointing where it should be. So we're just going to glue and clamp this thing on. It fits pretty well. So a couple clamps, a little bit of glue, doesn't take much. Pretty much rely on the mechanics of the dovetail to hold everything together. I mean, a good neck set, good dovetail fit, you should pretty much be able to just put it on the guitar, push it down, clamp it a little bit, and you should pretty much be able to string it up like that without any glue. But we'll put a little glue on so we don't pop it out, but I keep it pretty minor, just as much as we need. So just a little on the dovetail. I'll put a little under the tongue on that block, but it shouldn't take much. Could be using my little brush right here, but whatever. Just put a little on with the finger, and maybe a little more down at the bottom of the dovetail so it makes sure that end holds really good, but it takes very little glue. I've taken necks off before, people reset them, and it's like the whole thing is just one big giant puddle of glue. Not that this neck will ever have to be taken off, I don't think, but you never know. Always think about the future and what might be happening. So I'm just putting a little glue on that front edge where this sits. Not a big deal. Keep it from caving in or anything like that, but really that's it. This goes down inside our dovetail. Got a little caul for the tops of my frets. A couple of clamps ready. Doesn't take much. If I can do this without it, you can see me what I'm doing. So kind of put two clamps on it, one on one side of the dovetail, one on the other. Should have got a little more. Oh, like right over that, where the dovetail is. Put these clamps just over the body, just a hair. But that should do it. And it looks pretty good. All right, we're all strung up. This crazy guy. It's a holding tune, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it came out. As far as I know, but our octave came out nice. It's right there at the body where it should be. So yeah, it's up to this guy to play it. But these things are interesting. You get like a really, it's hard to hear maybe, but like the fifths and stuff are pretty spot on. Just a little bit sweeter depending on how you play it. Try to do like a C chord.
fine, but it's like if you go to a G, you almost knock it down like one of those microtones. Can't play it. Anyway, yeah. There you go. Lots of fun. It was fun fretting it. So if you want one, it's I think about $17 a fret. So do the math.